It's good to see you. Welcome back. Today I'd like to share with you about someone who has been very important in my life. I've never mentioned him before, but it's my godfather. His name is Uncle Eddie, and he recently passed away at 90 years old. In fact, about 3 months ago, according to the time of this recording. And I think you'll find his life inspiring. He was born in 1934. Very different life in 1934, wasn't it? And he grew up on a small little farm on the eastern side of Saskatchewan. And by the time he was 12 years old, my grandpa couldn't look after the farm anymore. My grandpa had a bad back, and so he couldn't do the chores. So at 12 years old, my uncle finished up his grade 8, and he went to work on the farm. Very different life for a 12-year-old now than back then. He wasn't playing video games. He wasn't plugged into all the extracurricular activity. At 12 years old, he started working on the farm. So what was his life? Well, it meant waking up early in the morning and milking the cows. That's how my baba and my grandpa paid for the bills. He also fed the chickens. He fed the pigs. They had some turkeys. They had some horses. And then they had the crops and the grain. And so when in the fall time would come, he was part of the harvest, and he would shovel from the half ton all the grain into the auger that would move the grain up into the grain bins. He did a lot of shoveling of grain. That's something my grandpa had trouble doing because of his bad back. And then in the winter, they lived in a log house. The exterior was covered with some planks. And when you're in a Saskatchewan winter, you gotta heat that thing, right? And how do you heat it? With wood. So my uncle was part of gathering the wood, splitting the wood, keeping the fires going during the night. See, this is a very different life for a 12, 13, 14-year-old than now. We can't, a 13-year-old can't imagine that. And then my dad was born. My dad was born at 12, he's 12 and a half years younger than my Uncle Eddie, so quite a big spread. So my dad's memory of his older brother is not his older brother going to school, but working on the farm alongside my grandpa, doing chores, looking after the farm. And so my dad had the chance to get an education. Elementary school, the school was a little ways away, and in the spring and also in the fall, my dad would ride his bike to school. But the winter was very different. The snow would be too deep and it would be cold. So my Uncle Eddie, his older brother, would connect a caboose, which is an enclosed sleigh, to a team of horses, and he would drive my dad to school in the morning, and then after school, he would go pick him up. So every day, this is what my uncle would do. He'd hook up a team of horses in the morning, drive my dad during the winter, and come back and then do the same, pick him up in the afternoon. This is a real disruption to the workday on the farm, isn't it? So needless to say that my uncle served and sacrificed for my dad to get that education in elementary school, and then also into junior high. When the roads got a little bit better, they built him up, and instead of the horse and sleigh, then he was able to drive. And this was in the period of time in the early 1950s, and this is prior to electricity coming into the area of that part of Saskatchewan. And then for high school, my dad would go to a town which is a little bit further away, and at that point, my uncle would drive him every day for his grade 9 year, and then after that, the buses came. But this was all pretty important because this allowed my dad to get a high school education and then go on to university and get an education there, which is where he met my mom. So in one way, without my godfather sacrificing and serving on the farm and bringing my dad to school, I wouldn't be here. So then what happens? Well, my mom and dad, they fall in love. They were educators. They raised 7 kids. I'm the oldest of 7. And I have so many memories of Dad and Mom packing up our 7 kids and driving 7 to 8 hours back to that farm on the eastern side of Saskatchewan to visit my Uncle Eddie and my Baba and Grandpa. And that's where my memories kick in. So I remember Uncle Eddie still working on that farm, an eligible bachelor, working alongside my grandpa who was getting older and my Baba. And as the years went on, my memories of him shift to him caring for my grandparents. He lived with them in the house. My grandpa passed away. He cared for him. And then my Uncle Eddie also cared for my Baba, my grandma, for many years as her health declined. His life, a life of service towards them. When my Baba was in the home and her health was declining, he would go see her every day. And it was at this point where he met another woman who was also going into the home to care for one of her parents. Well, when my Baba passed away, he married that woman at age 67. He's married at age 67 for the first time. And fast forward to when he's 85 years old and his wife passes away. Now he's on that farm. He's been married for 18 years, has no children. And his health is such that he can't look after himself or the farm. It's not good for him to be out in rural Saskatchewan. So that's where my parents stepped into his life in a very big way and helped them make some decisions. And they moved him from that homestead where he had spent his whole life to our hometown, that's 7 hours on the other side of our province. And they found him a place to stay. They found him health care. And for the next 3 years, they really cared for him. In one way, they cared for him in a way that he cared for my grandparents. And they sacrificed a lot for him over these last 3 years. And it was beautiful for us because when we would go home to visit my mom and dad, guess who was there? Uncle Eddie. And see, Uncle Eddie was always the favorite uncle because he never had kids. And so he was so delighted when all of us siblings, my dad would come home and he would bring us all to that farmhouse and we'd overtake that farmhouse. So he was always everyone's favorite uncle. And so now our favorite uncle is right next door. So when we go home to visit mom and dad, who would be there at supper time? Well, Uncle Eddie would be there. For the last 3 years, he's been there for Christmases and Easters and Thanksgivings. And we all have seen his health decline. And this summer, 2 weeks before he passed away, I went home. And we went to the home where he was just to have a visit like we would always do. And he was always so excited to see me and Janelle. And he would see our kids and he would look at our children and be so happy. And so happy for Janelle and I because we were experiencing something that he really wanted, but never had the chance to have because of his service to others. And he would often tell me how he had wanted to have a family, but he couldn't. And this last time when I saw him 2 weeks before he passed away, he recounted some of his memories that I'd shared with you of caring for his parents as their health declined. And he said something like, I always wanted to have a family like you, but I couldn't. That's just the way it was, he said. And then he got lost in his thoughts. And he went quiet for a number of seconds. He looked away. And then he looked back at me with a smile and said, and if I had to do it all over again, I would not change a thing. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to live. And it reminds me of what St. Alphonsus says in his sermons today. I beseech you, therefore, to imagine yourself already at the point of death, about to appear before the tribunal of Jesus Christ, Reflect what, when reduced to that state, you wish to have done. Would it not be a grace for us to be at that point, to be able to say, and if I had to do it all over again, I would not change a thing? You know, at the end of our life, what are we going to regret and what are we not going to regret? We're not going to get to the end of our life and think, why was I not more selfish? Why did I not spend more of my resources on myself? Why did I not take time more for myself? No, I think it'll be the opposite. Why didn't I spend more time with the people I love? Why did I not serve them with a more generous heart? Why did I not pour out myself as a life of service in a more generous way? What do you think? Anyways, I hope this story has been an encouragement to you. If you can remember to pray for the soul of my godfather, Uncle Eddie, I'd appreciate it. Share with me below what's stood out to you and why. We'll see you soon.